Howdy, y'all. Welcome back. These Americans have been to Europe. This is what changed their mind as an American, what they saw. Let's take a look.
Who've been to or traveled to Europe, what's something Europe has changed in your mind that now you can't let go?
Just the way that people talk here in America, so loud, so shiny. And the way they think it's better to have a big smile on their face than to have their natural facial expression. People in Vienna don't tolerate that.
People in Vienna, okay. That would be awesome to go to Vienna, to Austria. Yeah, that one, I'm going to leave that one alone. I feel like that one's so generic, right? Do people really not smile in Europe? I think that's a little bit of an overstatement. Does everyone always smile in America? I think that's a little bit of an overstatement. Yeah, people talk different. There's a lot of different ways to talk in the U.S. In my experience, a lot of people don't shout at each other. You know, there's certain environments where people talk louder and certain environments where you don't. So that one's always been an interesting take to me.
I spent 7 weeks in Iceland, and
Nice.
I learned that according to Icelandic politics, Bernie Sanders is considered far right.
Oh, man.
Okay, so I only found out about this recently, and it kind of blew my mind. But I watched a TikTok of a lady who worked on a farm, and she basically went on to say, like grocery stores and stuff like that hold auctions. And in these auctions, they sell off near expired or expired food stock that they can't sell to us and we're not going to buy or eat. And they sell it to farmers. And farmers use it to feed their livestock.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So what that basically means is the same
I believe that.
processed garbage that we eat from grocery stores every day is being fed to livestock to keep them sustained with, you know, a few pieces of carrot and apple chopped up into it. Like, there were Ritz crackers in this trough of food that they were going to... Ritz crackers, bro.
I am so glad you asked.
Makes you think.
Healthcare. And I'm not referring
there it is.
to universal healthcare, although that is a great
The golden example, the healthcare one. Let's hear it.
I am talking about the level or standard of care that you receive as a patient. For example, I sprained my wrist while snowboarding. And although there was a language barrier, they x-rayed, splinted, wrapped, dressed, did everything that they could to make sure that my wrist was going to heal properly. And went into detail about what was happening to my body and how I could aid my body in its healing process. Again, language barrier, but they really did try. When I broke these same wrists in the United States a few years later, I was told to ice, elevate, and it would be in a cast for 6 to 7 weeks. I was only in it for 5 weeks, though. Then, when I got my cast off, I was very likely going to need physical therapy for my mobility. However, I was told by the PA that I won't need physical therapy because my wrist can bend enough.
Living in Europe for the last couple of years has taught
Yeah,
me
that one, I can see some truth. It just depends, right? Just in our own experiences here, there have been basically it took effort to find like healthcare providers that are actually really awesome, right? They actually talk to you. They explain things. They try and help out in more ways than one, right? And so that does exist. I think great quality of care can exist in the U.S., right? I think there are some amazing examples here, but they might get lost in a sea of not great examples. I think that could go for anywhere. So I think that one's a little harder to pinpoint, in my opinion, because I know we have some great specialists in the U.S. Like, people do come from other countries here to get care done. Then again, some Americans go to other places to get care done. So it's kind of all over the place. We've had some really kind of subpar, to be friendly, experiences in healthcare here, you know, and in my circle. And of course, we've had some really good ones. So yeah, that just depends, I think. But I do hear some pretty good stories about healthcare, doctors, this kind of thing, especially in Europe. So
more than anything that the propaganda surrounding the United States being the best country on earth does one of two things. It either makes you complacent in being taken advantage of by the oligarchs, or it villainizes you for speaking out against your exploitation. But walking around saying you're the best country on earth does nothing to improve the country itself.
Good
But
point.
saying that you're the best country on earth really helps keep those who are in power, and those voices who are suppressed continue to be suppressed.
Well, I could say, again, this is just my scope, right? This is one person. This is my scope of things. Everyone, in the U.S. or abroad might have a different view of this. But let me say, as an American who did grow up with that mindset being fed to me that we're the best at everything, America's the best, blah, 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 right? I have to say that that kind of way of thinking, that propaganda, whatever you want to call it, is getting harder to find. I think, of course, you don't want it to swing super hard the other way. I don't think people should just all hate their country to death, right? And not even be able to explain why, or not even be able to say what they want to change or something, right? So I don't think that's great either. But the whole, like, America is the best thing, I don't see a lot of people with that attitude out in the real world anymore, whereas you might have seen that, more common like 20 years ago. Most people are just realistic, and they want the best for the country, but they know that there's a lot of problems and there's a lot to fix. And unfortunately, what's, I don't know, like government, corruption, social media, all these different things. Yeah, it is pretty wild. It messes with your head. There's so many different takes on things. There's so many radical takes. And quite frankly, I think our country is going through a lot right now. I don't think you'd find many Americans that would just confidently say we're the best on earth, especially right now. If they said that, then they might be a little delusional. And you know what? If they want to think that, okay, but like, tell me why it's the best then. Maybe there's something that we don't, right?
A lot of people are going to say the food. And you're not wrong, because America's food is so much more processed. It takes like 2 months for your stomach to actually acclimate back to all of that. So for the first 2 months, you're going to probably be sick. But something I really realized after talking to a lot of people from Europe is that, unlike Americans, their job isn't like their main source of pride. In America, we tend to really boast about how many hours we're putting into the grind of our job.
Yeah.
Whereas in Europe, they don't really tend to do that.
That's one thing I super admire about other cultures. Like, I hear that about Europe. I hear that to some degree about Australia. Like, dude, that I must... I'm not a good American in that sense, because I have always been someone who recognizes that you have to, you have to work, and you have to have a place in society, and you have to have something to be proud of, right? Some people are proud of a career or whatever. I get it, but I am someone who has never wanted or dreamed of or wanted to brag about working 50, 60, 70 hours a week. And, I'm building this, and I'm bragging about that, and I'm working weekends. Like, yeah, that's never been me. I would much rather live my life. I'd rather have that balance. I understand you got to work, you got to make money, you got to save money, and you got to work to do this, work to do that. But, I want to work so I can live, work to live, right? I don't want to live to work. That's not what I dream of. So any culture that doesn't center around like work your butt off 24/7, I'm all for that.
Not to say that they're not proud of what they do for work, but they tend to have a lot of different things that they're more proud of than how long they work. And
yeah, she makes a good point there. I think it's great to have pride in your work. You should, if you're going to work on something, why wouldn't you want to strive to learn and do something the best, right? If you're crafting something, do it right. Put your hard work, put your thought, put your heart into it. But having pride in your work, don't mix that up with like having pride in, I'm just working a lot, right? I want to work a lot, and I don't know.
Where they work for so long. I'm not saying that culture is not shifting, especially with millennials and Gen Z and Alpha.
It is shifting in America,
It's definitely something I noticed, and definitely something I wanted to change.
Because unfortunately, there's a big thing I grew up with where people used to work for companies for 30 or 40 years, and that basically is impossible now, right? For my generation, millennials, and then, of course, Gen Z, like that's even a whole nother story. Like, I just don't see that as a common path, whereas people 40 years ago might have had that want, at least in America. They wanted to work a lot, and they wanted to work for a company for 30, 35 years and retire, and that's just not how it works anymore, at least here in America. So
The fact that I quite literally need an insurance for everything where I live. So for those of you who don't know, I am a U.S. American, originally from Atlanta, Georgia, and I now live in the Nuremberg area in Bavaria, Germany.
Cool.
I had no idea that certain types of insurances in other parts of the world existed. In the United States, I guarantee you, more people have car insurance than have health insurance. And here, I've got health insurance, car insurance.
Well, you want to know what's crazy about the U.S. before he continues? Yeah, most people, pretty much everyone, unless they're really risking it, everyone has car insurance. If you're driving a car on the road, which in the U.S. and 99% of places you could live, you need a car. You have to have car insurance. It's the law. You cannot drive a car, whether it's brand new, old, doesn't matter. You cannot drive without insurance. But at the same time, I guess it's not really like that. Like, you don't have to have health insurance if you want, right? So you have to have car insurance, but you're not guaranteed and or don't have to have health insurance. Kind of weird, yeah?
Personal liability insurance as a self-employed individual, legal insurance as a self-employed individual, accident insurance, I'm no longer able to work insurance, retirement insurance, private retirement insurance, almost forgot about dental, homeowners insurance. What should I insure next?
We always talk shit about the States. Someone who's American, you are always seeing like the cons about being an American and living in the States. But one thing that I learned that was like of all the good things, and I felt lucky to be living in the States, was from Italy. I lived in Italy for about 6 months. And I have realized that as a young person, if you have the spirit of an entrepreneur and you're not 50 years old, it is so hard for you to get the resources and the credibility to just do it. Additionally, it's not as easy to fail and just open another startup the way it is here in California and Silicon Valley. And that, like, learning from failure came from the States. So it made me realize I feel really lucky to be a young person who has aspirations and who has an American passport.
Okay, so wow, that I am, whoa, in the same dimension here. I have never seen positive things about America in one of these videos. I'm shocked. Good on her. Look, I think it's healthy to see both sides, right? Everyone loves to rip on America 24/7, rip on Americans, classify us as all the same loud idiots. So it gets taxing after a while. And we're taxed enough over here, trust me. Oh, but anyway, so that's just one anecdote, right? She's basically saying that it seemed a lot harder to start a business as a young, optimistic individual in Italy as opposed to the U.S. And the thought of starting a couple businesses and failing or whatever basically wasn't an option in Italy, whereas it is in the U.S. That's one anecdote. It's very specific, but I can see what she's saying. It is very business-friendly country. I think everyone knows that, right? The U.S., if you want to win here, I always say the harsh truth, because a lot of people don't. They just are employees their whole life, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think that is like the safe route. If you want to really win in the U.S., you have to start a business, right? It's catered to that. The tax code, the money, everything is catered towards being a business owner rather than just taking a more traditional route. So I guess if you're talking about business world, I mean, yeah, I think the U.S. is definitely up there at the top, right? You know, you don't want to start multiple businesses and fail necessarily, so I'm not sure I agree with that. But I guess depending on who you are, I mean, you could do that a lot easier. Yeah, you could start 30 businesses and fail in America. There's no limit, you know. I'm not sure that's the right approach, but again, it comes down to individual examples. Can you start a business in Europe? You know, as far as I know, yes. Can you start a business easily in the U.S.? Yes. But hey, I'm just glad to see one that wasn't totally ripping on America, right? Like it's like the worst place in the universe. So I do appreciate that.
The main thing that opened my eyes when I went to Europe, and this was when I was a teenager.
Who's
I went
this?
to France. I've been to France
Talking to the ceiling.
twice. And I've been to England and I've been to Austria. The main thing that I noticed was the food.
Yes.
Even though that food is super rich, I still lost weight because
Yeah.
the additives that we add in our food are banned over there.
I'm telling you, that is the one thing I just want to hop on a plane and go anywhere. Like anywhere in Europe. Like I just want to get some amazing fresh food abroad. I just can't wait. That's like a bucket list thing for me. Just eat a bunch of awesome stuff. Yeah, do we have, again, I always go back to this. We do have really, really good quality food in the U.S. It's just hard to find, and it's really expensive, right? Of course, we have some of the top chefs and amazing cuisines from all over the world you can find in big cities here, but it's just not realistic. It's not a day-to-day thing. All the beautiful, like, homemade good baked goods, bakeries and sweets and delicacies and fresh ingredient lunches and all these things with wine, right? Like, that's hard to find. That's not common in the U.S., whereas it might be common in France or Germany or Italy, right? Like, so I totally agree with the food one. Oh, the food is more around convenience here, and convenient food here is just not going to be grade A quality. That's how it works.
So even if you eat more than you would have ever eaten over here, over there, you still will lose weight because a lot of their food isn't modified. And on top of that, how they price their food is different. Like, it's the opposite of what we do over here. So that was a big eye opener for me.
That's one for me too. I've seen videos now where basically groceries are usually cheaper in most, or if all, European countries than here in the U.S. when it comes to certain things. Most things. There's a couple things that are cheaper here. And then, of course, you could argue other things, like I know housing and gasoline, fuel prices, and all these things. It depends. Like, certain things are cheaper in the U.S. But groceries, a lot of them are very, like, produce and things like that are very expensive here. Whereas in Europe, they're not. It's so bizarre. But even take all of that out, regardless of the prices, like she said, like the amount of weird additives and chemicals and crazy stuff that's in, most foods you buy here is just alarming, right? And one good thing about social media that has come out is it's kind of educated people that, hey, be aware, right? Look at ingredients. Take a look at how things are made, right? It's kind of exposed how much crazy stuff is in a lot of foods. When you look at, I think one of the generic examples is you look at French fries or ketchup or something, right? It's like the American version has like 29 ingredients and 26 of them you can't pronounce. Whereas you look at somewhere in the UK or somewhere in the EU and it's like, oh, it has 5 ingredients. It's like 5 versus 29. Like, what are we putting this stuff in there for? Like, why? Oh, the windows, yeah. That's a W for sure. I had someone mention in another video I did about the European versus U.S. or American windows. I had someone mention, right, know-it-all, say that, all my homes in the U.S. have those. Yeah, those aren't common. They're not common. They're common. People show these in Europe in cheap hotels, in apartments, in houses, everywhere, right? These really fancy, thick, insulated windows that open all these different ways. It's cool, right? They have the blinds inside in between the glass. That is not common. Of course, if you got money, you can do anything in the U.S. that you can do in Europe, in my opinion, right? Like, of course, you could have a house that's built straight up like a European house or apartment and have the exact same windows and doors or whatever. But it's just not common, right? I know people like that person obviously have trouble understanding that, but typically American windows are not going to look like that, and I think those are so cool. But that is going to do it for this one. There is tons of clips that weren't or that are still in that video that we didn't get to cover in this one, so I will link this in the description down below so you can check those out, and perhaps we'll revisit this another time. It's been a while since I've done one of these. I was kind of doing these a long time ago, like over a year ago, last winter, like late winter, early spring 2022. I kind of was at the forefront of this, and now I see these all over YouTube. But I haven't done these in a while. I thought it'd be fun to revisit it. I hope you enjoyed it, and I would love to hear your comments down below. please throw a thumbs up on there if you liked it. Subscribe to be part of this amazing community we do have here. And that's about it for this one, y'all. My name is Ian. You're watching IWrocker, and until next time, I'll catch you later.